VPN at technophilespodcast.com. I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast.
The reason that this is so accessible these days is because of the internet and the cloud and people just being a click away.
This week, David, Vee, Krista-Lee, and Jake talk about the myriad of open source projects that are taking place in major companies. They also discuss the planet's rising CO2 levels, Super Mario Run for iOS, and the Flatpack truck. Let's talk about how the crowd and accessibility is helping make science and technology even better, because this is the Technophiles 305th episode. Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's episode. I am here with the regular cast, Vee Laabs, Krista-Lee Malone, and Jake Gill. Guys, this is our second episode in the new studio now. It's coming together a little bit more. We have walls now. Yes. Which is kind of exciting.
Walls are nice.
They're not painted yet. There's still a couple, there's some mudding that needs to happen, but every time we're in here, it feels a little bit more like a studio, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah,
I kind of think that, you know how we're doing this thing where we have a main topic now with this new format?
Yeah.
I think by the time we go through a full rotation, we're easily going to be back up 100% and have video podcasts. So we're still putting this out on YouTube tonight, but it's going to be an audio only with like just a logo, which will be fine.
Yeah.
But let's see. I don't know if there's too much to really get to know right now. I mean, you guys, weeks. Your guys, one too many.
Our Labor Day weekends.
Oh yeah. Let me do this.
Thing.
Krista-Lee, let's go with you first for your story. But did anybody have a particularly interesting Labor Day weekend?
I threw a backyard party. Well, sort of a backyard party. Yeah. We cleaned out, my boyfriend and I cleaned out our back, kind of like a back patio area that had been fenced off with like a gate and stuff.
Sure.
It had overgrown with like vines and thorns and gross stuff.
Yeah.
Over the past few years he's lived there, and everybody else that's lived there didn't bother to touch it. So we spent the summer cleaning it out, and so this was kind of like our celebration of like being able to use that space.
Sure
it's like
thing.
a lovely little fenced off area with a table in there, and we grilled some sausages and had some cake, and it was pretty awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Mm-hmm. How about Krista-Lee or Jake? Did you guys do anything crazy this weekend or anything?
I worked.
You worked. I went down and saw my family, but actually it was for my father's birthday. His birthday's on September 4th, so it kind of turned into a birthday Labor Day thing. I don't know. How about you, Jake?
I was at a wedding on Friday for some friends. That was a good time. I was here in Milwaukee at the Pabst brewery.
Cool.
It was sweet. And then what else did I do over the weekend? I don't know. Everything kind of molded together. So family.
Kind of did.
Yeah.
I built a desk. That was kind of fun.
That's
that was
cool.
a little geeky.
I saw you showing that off.
I got it's from the company Autonomous.
Ooh.
It's like it's 7 manual modes of kind of like I can set where I want it, but it's just standing sitting desk.
Oh,
yeah.
Bamboo toe and
Those are
everything.
so
It's
nice.
really nice. And actually,
really,
you know what?
really
For standing desks, fairly affordably priced.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I think the starting model, I say affordably priced or whatever, but they're generally really expensive. I think the starting model is like $350.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And I paid a little bit extra. I'm kind of a fan of bamboo. The new Scooter site has like a bamboo background on it. I look forward to having someday being able to do something to a living room with. I love the wood. It's great. So I was like, I have to get that. So,
Got it.
Yeah.
Bamboo's
Is
nice.
It's very nice.
Is it hand cranked? Sometimes you can get a desk.
Nope. So you plug it in, and so I have like basically I have 2 modes set. Yep. I have one mode for when I'm sitting, and I have the chair in front of it, and then if I want to pop it up, I press the second button, walk away for like 5 seconds, and I actually, guys, legitimately, I pretend to use the force. Every time it moves, I'm like, Booey, get in here, and she's like, what do you want? And I'm like, oh, as the thing's raising, and she just walks
turns
away.
around.
Yeah, pretty much, And then I point to the no girls allowed sign,
Right. Of course.
You can't even cross this line anyways.
Well, I tell you what, let's get into our topics here tonight. We are going to cover 3 quick topics, and then we'll go to break and be discussing our main topic, which actually, Jake, why don't you tease that for just a second here? What are we mostly going to be speaking about tonight?
Well, so tonight we're going to dabble into open source technologies and open source access and kind of talk about how the crowd and accessibility helps make science and tech even better and more powerful and more usable.
So this is kind of a new thing for us. Did you have a fun time, a good time researching this topic and finding out what you wanted?
I did, and we can get into. So there were like 2 or 3 things that kind of triggered me down this path, I suppose.
Yeah.
And once I opened the rabbit hole, once I went down the rabbit hole, it was just and there's so much out there.
It can
and
happen.
we're not going to be able to cover it all, but we can definitely dig into some of the stuff and I think it'll be interesting, hopefully. So
anyone who listened to episode 304 heard us talk about how we do a new format now, and it means that in part 2 and 3 we are able to dig in deeper to a broader topic. And also one of the things that's really fun about that is that a different cast member each week will be, I guess you could say, presenting or bringing that topic or idea. And the idea is that they've had a couple weeks to kind of do some research. And I tell you what, 2 things have happened to me this week. So we talked about autonomous trucks last week, and that was when I was able to research. I'm already thinking about like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about like, there's some International Space Station stuff that I kind of like want to do maybe on episode 308, which is going to be my next episode. Like it's already triggered. Like I'm getting excited about researching the next thing. Whereas, with the old format, sometimes it was like, oh, I don't know what to talk about this week. So much happened. Blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Jake, another interesting thing happened to me. I was so calm all day today. I was like, oh, yeah, just doing the podcast tonight, blah, 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 blah. And I realized it was because with this new format, for the first time ever, I'm kind of able to chill out a little bit and like learn from, like, for example, tonight specifically what you're bringing, and like learn from what Krista-Lee will bring next, or Vee will bring next week, and Krista-Lee will bring the week after that. And it was really exciting to just hang out, and like I actually was almost a fan of the show today. I was kind of like, oh, I can't wait to hear what we talk about tonight.
Right. And that was last week for me too, just watching the show notes kind of get together, and like, we have quick stories, but I was like, oh, I just get to show up and
chat.
Yeah,
I'm really excited.
Cool.
So we will be getting into that in about 10 or 15 minutes here, but first we're going to talk about our not 5 main topics. We have 3 topics. I have a topic. We found some quick things that happened in the news today.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to comment about anything that we're talking about, they are welcome to email us at technophilespodcast@gmail.com. And actually, I embed an email link into our show notes. So if you're listening on iTunes or Scooter and you go into our episode description, you can... Or Stitcher. I just saw Jake laugh on the other side of the table.
I pay him, guys, so much money.
The Scooter app
really
has
right
Technophiles email links embedded into it. Doesn't it?
Okay, right there.
Like a little Easter egg in there.
Yep.
That is not true. But if you want to email us, you are welcome to. If you have any comments about the things we talk about, even if we speak about them in episodes, later episodes, that will be very exciting. And you can also tweet us at TechnophilesPod and use the hashtag Technophiles305 for this episode. We tend to do that, and it'll be Technophiles306 for the next one, or just Technophiles. It's all good. Our Twitter is TechnophilesPod. And sometimes people are leaving comments on Facebook and YouTube. And actually, Krista-Lee, that kind of leads us into your first story here, I think, because why are you saying no?
Because I changed my story right after I sent you that message. But let's talk about that real quick, because
David did not read this
epic
conversation.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we get comments on our YouTube, every day we get a few for sure, even like on a slow day. However, something is going on with one of your newscasts, your Star Trek Replicator newscast from about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
There is like this epic conversation going on in the comments there. It's you and 3 or 4 other viewers. Can you just tell us what the heck? It's gotten to the point now where I'm getting so many notifications on our YouTube creator app that I'm kind of like, I can't even follow anymore. I don't even know. It's like all day long, this conversation's going, which is the best thing in the world. But Krista-Lee, what is happening?
So basically what's happening is what I was actually hoping would happen. So I ended the episode with a question, like we do. And my question was very lighthearted. It was just, would you rather have a transporter or a replicator from Star Trek? But what has evolved is a conversation into the evolution of science and which one would have to come first in order to allow for it to advance to the next one.
Okay.
So it's great, because yes, Star Trek obviously is science fiction, but a lot of times real science ends up coming out of science fiction. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy to see this conversation. Now, there's definitely a couple of different tangents, because if you really dig into it, you will see there's also a side conversation about raising chickens.
So, I know. I don't know what was going on there. It's all over the place. And then a few other commenters.
It sounds a lot like YouTube.
In.
Yeah.
Well,
it sounds like
but it's
the
cool.
YouTube comment section.
I like the
best
breakdown
possible
of the
comment
replicator, how
section.
sometimes it's actually synthesizing holograms. Sometimes it's actually creating, like, the water is real. I saw the joke about Wesley Crusher and stuff, and that was all very funny.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the chicken conversation is actually making an economic argument about, you know, what would happen if we had replicators, if we didn't have replicators. So, I mean, it's kind of a weird example, but it does kind of tie in. But yeah, so you have this economic thread and you have this technological thread, and those two go hand in hand. You don't have technology without economics, and vice versa. So yeah, and I've been trying to, you know, respond as much as I can. I know I'm not responding to every single individual comment because I have 2 jobs and I podcast.
Well, just the fact there's like 3 or 4 accounts that are kind of having a whole conversation over there.
Yeah.
And we get comments here and there. People will say stuff. We love it when we get that. But like a full-on thread, that thing has been going on for weeks. But we shouldn't waste any more time on it. But people are welcome to go to our YouTube page or go to our website, technophilespodcast.com, to check out any of our videos. But that was a newscast that you did about a half a year ago. And it was, I think, quote, what if we could create a Star Trek replicator, right?
Well, it was there was I can't remember the title now, but there was actually a scientific breakthrough that would lead toward that possibility, because what it was is some scientists made a experiment to turn energy into matter. Yeah. And at the very basic level, right, that is what a replicator is doing.
Energy into matter. Can we build a Star Trek replicator? Episode 92 on the Technophiles newscast, which you can find on our YouTube page by searching Technophiles. Krista-Lee, I just looked at my notes for what your actual quick news story is this week, and it's so morbid. It appears to be intense.
Yeah, that's a little heavy.
A little bit.
She was chatting about YouTube, and I was like, cool, man, cool, fun times, awesome. And then I look down and I see past the point of no return for global warming is what Krista-Lee put down as her title tonight.
Yes.
What is this?
That's true. So here's what happened. The Cliff Notes here is that last year, most of the ice caps were and glaciers, right? So not just in the ice caps, had reached a point of 400 parts per million or more of carbon dioxide. And just recently this year, I want to say this was maybe like a couple weeks, or it was at some point over the summer. They tested down in Antarctica, which was kind of lagging behind the rest of the glaciers. And they have now also reached 400 parts per million.
That is to say that down in Antarctica, they were melting slower than other areas.
Well, this is actually CO2 being trapped inside the ice.
Oh, interesting.
So the 400 number was a benchmark, you know, put out. And the oceans, the liquid water, do the same thing where they actually trap CO2, which is a major thing, because otherwise, I mean, we would be well beyond any model.
Aren't the oceans like doing a very good job at, I mean, they're trying their hardest to defend against.
Right. They're saving us. They are straight up saving us. Right. So they trap all the CO2. Otherwise,
they're the tank of the group.
Right. Like I've read.
What? The ocean?
Yeah.
The ocean is the tank of
60% of the planet.
Of the party
on
that
the
is Earth.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I got this, but not for much longer.
Right. Yes. And that's what this article is talking about. Like, we have reached that point where it's like, that health bar is below 50%. Our tank is in trouble. Our cleric is dead. You know, we are to that point.
We're out of potions.
We're also to the point where nobody any longer expects that we could actually reverse it. So now the technology that we are going to be inventing and the science we're going to be putting money into needs to be, because it is now not reversible. Now what do we do? How are we going to deal with it? What are the things we're going to invent? How are we going to live our lives to...
And how many people, animals, etc. will die?
Right. Well, we're already in the middle of a mass extinction.
Yeah.
So, you know...
Well, are we in a new geological epoch now as well? Didn't that just happen? I have a computer in front of me. I'd rather not use it.
Why don't you fact check that as we go on to our next story here, Jake? It would be interesting to find. But Krista-Lee, it looks like you found this on hngn.com, and we'll have it in our sources, in our show notes on our podcast, on our website, technophilespodcast.com. Any closing comments on that thing, on that story? It's sad.
It is. Yeah, I know. I feel like I don't want to put a closing comment on it, because it's like, here is this doomsday scenario. We are literally in the middle of it.
So we are Indeed. I just found it.
All right.
Anthropocene. It's a proposed epoch that begins when human activity started to have significant global impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems. They haven't officially approved the term as recognized. However, they're formally designating that it has started. And this is what they're talking about. Calling it.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense because we're causing the mass extinction and the global warming. Yeah. This is human cause. So I guess the closing thought is, hello, humanity. Let's get our collective crap together.
Didn't the Pope just say that destroying the environment should be it's a sin as bad as all other sins?
He did say something along the lines.
I hate to paraphrase the Pope here, but I believe it was something like that.
I think I heard him say something like, "We have a moral imperative to actually deal with
damage the environment."
Global
Anyways,
fantastic. Well, very
sounds like we could do a whole topic on this someday. As a
Krista-Lee does not have her topic selected yet.
I feel like she has like 5 or 6 in the.
I do though.
In 2 weeks, it'll be episode 307 will be Krista-Lee's episode. We're going to move along here. And I want to talk real quick about, so I thought I was going to be talking about, so honestly, when we were putting our notes together this week, I thought, well, I guess I'll have my quick story be the Tesla rocket explosion. Like pretty much everybody already knows about it, but maybe
it was a UFO that blew it up, by the way.
Maybe we could recap it. Is this a joke? Is that not, what is it? I mean, are you?
No, there's some blurry thing that was in a photo and
everybody's
got it.
It's it was a bird
because aliens.
So I thought maybe we could cover like what it means for Facebook now, what it means for satellites and internet and all that stuff. I thought maybe we'd talk about that, but then I realized that the iPhone 7 would get announced the day that we're recording this.
That was.
And certainly whatever, rockets blowing up and satellites not going into outer space, that was going to give internet to hundreds of thousands of people. That's all very important. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, iPhone 7's coming out, though. It might be interesting to talk about that real quick. So I thought my story was going to be, okay, all the standard stuff. Like today we learned that the iPhone 7 won't have an earphone jack and it's got some other things that's pretty interesting going on. Yeah. And I thought I was going to talk about all that. And then as I'm watching the stinking keynote... So we've talked about Pokemon Go a lot on this show.
Oh, yeah.
And it blew my mind when, anyway, Nintendo. So I didn't think. Can you help me out here?
Yes. They kicked off the show with Miyamoto on stage.
Miyamoto. Mario, Zelda, Miyamoto. Like, it's exciting when Miyamoto comes on stage for a Nintendo conference.
Yeah.
And he comes out on an Apple conference. I was like, what?
I was on Twitter just kind of scrolling through and somebody posted like Miyamoto's at the Apple conference. And I'm like, I need to watch this now.
Now the fanboy in me is very excited because basically the lead here is that Nintendo's going to make a Mario game for iOS.
Yeah.
What's also kind of interesting about that, and you guys can kind of see the links right now, that's literally Miyamoto and Mario right there in the Apple keynote. Like, when did we ever think that was going to happen? Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
That's
because,
wild.
I mean, it's crazy because we've had so many...
Apple doesn't sell gaming devices.
Well, but this is the thing. We've talked about... You
played a game on a Mac.
How, like, iPad, iPhones have what's killing handheld gaming, killing from a certain perspective.
Sure.
And that was actually, the iPhone is like the biggest competitor to like a DS and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, it was, people would deduce that Apple and Nintendo would have to be logistically enemies or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So this all got started with this stinking Pokemon Go situation. And so Pokemon Go, I think, is like what finally, we talked about Miitomo on this show, which was that first Nintendo app.
Yep.
Nintendo announced that they were going to have a couple apps come out. I think we even talked about it on this show, Vee. It was your story. Mm-hmm. And it was like a Fire Emblem app was going to come out, Miitomo, and we knew this Pokemon
Animal
Go
Crossing,
thing.
It was also
an Animal Crossing one. But we even joked in that episode, and I think all 4 of us were on that episode. It was kind of a recent one. It was 295 or something like that. Or maybe 293. But anyway, we were joking about like, when are we going to be able to play our Mario or whatever on our iPhones? I'm getting a look from Jake over here. What is going on? You all right?
Are you not?
I'm totally fine.
All right, cool.
I promise.
Super cool. Anyway, my brain melted a little bit because Miyamoto comes out, and first of all, they did talk about like how that next Apple Watch is going to have Pokemon Go integration. Now, which would be nice because this next Apple Watch is going to have GPS in it. So finally, like Jake, you and V, you guys talked about this in your special report, your newscast special report about how you have to have the app open and running when you're using Pokemon Go. Well, at least if you also have an Apple Watch, or at least the Series 2,
thank God.
The app will run there. You know, all these kinds of things. But
they also mentioned
how much is the new watch?
It's
like,
I don't know,
$300-ish, like $369 or something stupid.
And it's a Series 2. It's not really Apple Watch 2. It's Series 2. It's like a little upgrade, whatever. But it has its own GPS, and that's a whole other thing. I don't want to waste too much time on it.
And like an aside thing, like Niantic announced very briefly, like one sentence, like, the Pokemon Go Plus wristband that's for like Android and stuff is coming out next month.
For iOS as well?
I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was the Apple keynote.
Yeah, I would assume it's also for Android.
Because you talked about that in your newscast.
Yeah, and we hadn't heard a word about it
in the special report. So anyway, let me get to the end of this here. They demoed, or at least showed a screenshot a little bit of a Mario game, which is going to be called Mario Run, Mario Brothers Run, which we can all deduce what that means. It's going to be one of these, maybe an infinite runner, or so I think it's probably going to be kind of like what the Rayman Legends games are now on iOS, you know, where you're running and jumping and stuff like that. But one thing that was interesting here, just a second here.
I just want Mario and
Mario I agree,
3.
and that's Super Mario Run is coming to iOS. I agree. Like you can already Sega released Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 and stuff for iOS. You can play it on your Apple TV, on tvOS. It works okay. I played the demo. It's all right, but you don't have
not the same as
you don't have those left and right buttons.
Controller.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like that digital pad becomes really important.
It does.
And iOS 9 or something had Bluetooth controller integration now, and you can still technically use those, and that's fine. But it looks like Super Mario Run is going to be kind of like you play Mario levels. It's in the style of the new Super Mario Brothers art style. And you will play levels, and they might have different levels every day, I would guess. And it's kind of like you'll be able to watch your friends. Their ghosts will play through the level, and maybe you'll try to play a little faster than them. And then there's leaderboards, and you'll have your Miitomo can come over and stuff like that. And so I think I agree. I really just want like a full-on Mario game on my iOS.
Yeah. But
this kind of makes sense if you want everybody whipping their phones out of their pockets, and just playing a couple Mario levels in this new game. And also, if someone's going to make the best runner ever, and I think it might be Miyamoto.
Yeah.
I trust him, even if it's going to be...
Okay, so like Mario is already kind of a runner, right? You just don't have to go forward right away unless you're on like a boss level.
Right. Yeah. It's not that different.
No, it's really not.
I think it's going to translate fine.
Well, we've never played whatever the old 2D scroller was like on something like an iPhone. Maybe it's not great.
So I've played 2D scrollers that try to emulate cross pads and digital pads, and it's horrible.
Yeah. So
they're
probably like, if we can't do it perfect, we need to just reinvent.
I've done
the company like is it Ubisoft that did the Rayman Legends platformer things for iOS.
Yeah.
That works pretty good. And what you do is your left and right he automatically runs, but then you swipe left and right. Mm-hmm. And I think you can press the lower right for him to pause. So run is automatic. Because you're not gonna hold it down. It's not like an old Nintendo controller, you know. Anyway, I want to keep on moving. Yeah. Mario, I never thought it was going to happen. I certainly thought we were going to get this Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing. I thought it was going to be years from now before we get a Mario style game on iOS. And I think because of the Pokemon Go stuff, somehow Apple and then this kind of lines up with the NX stuff, where Nintendo was saying that some of the NX stuff is going to be available on Android and iOS. Ooh. You know, the cracks are filling in here a little bit.
Yeah, it's becoming less of its own
Nintendo
thing.
Finally figured out that those Play stores and iTunes tend to make a little bit of money.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
It's nice.
All right, we got to keep moving. We're taking way too long here. I apologize. It took me a while to talk about that. V, you've got a story here.
I've got a story here about a truck you can assemble in 12 hours from like a flat box or a flat pack to a truck in 12 hours. And it's like a cargo truck.
Is it actually an IKEA truck?
It is not an IKEA truck.
Okay, that's just IKEA-like or something?
It's designed by a fellow named Gordon Murray, and he created a vehicle that's supposed to be able to kind of be a more durable alternative to and more easily replaceable than like your typical one-piece frame trucks that are like used a lot in Africa and countries like that.
Sure.
Or I mean, continents. So it's like a 40-foot shipping container, and it can hold like 6 Flatpack trucks.
Sure.
And hold like 2 assembled trucks, or like that's how many things it can fit in a shipping container. He's made it out of like lots of lightweight but durable material. Instead of being like a one-piece frame, he's got like lots of carbon fiber hexagonal tubes that are bolted together.
Right.
It's got a center seat, so it can be used in countries that drive on the left and right side of the road.
Oh, sure.
They've actually test driven it on Top Gear, and they said a lot of really nice things about it. It's got
cool.
like a huge amount of storage space, like bigger than your average pickup truck.
Yeah.
Which makes it incredibly useful. The back area has like a tarp over it, so it can be used as like emergency shelters. And it's an incredibly smooth ride. So it's durable, and it's not going to injure the passengers inside if they're going over like tough areas and like rough terrain. And
it definitely
like
has an off-road look to it.
It is.
But not like a go-kart or anything. It's a truck for sure.
It is a truck. Like it's pretty impressive.
It looks like you start with the bed of the truck, the frame. That part may not break down too much, and then you just start adding stuff on according to looking at.
It reminds me of like an old like Playmobil or like Connect set.
Yeah, it looks
everything together.
The little time lapse kind of picture they have here on Wired.com of like how the assembly goes looks like kind of like a Lego instruction manual. He kind of describes it as like an IKEA type thing, where you get all the parts and you just assemble it, and it takes about 12 hours to do. It's called the OX. It's pretty impressive. The final prototype that's out right now has about 60 pieces to it.
How much do they cost, Vee? Do you know?
It doesn't say what it costs right now. In fact, I think they're still in like kind of a funding period right now. Hold on. It needs GVT, the company that's helping make this, says it needs another $40 million to get OX trucks out in the world. But you know,
wait, are you sure not another 4 million?
Oh, what did I say?
40.
Oh, 4 million. Sorry.
That's all good.
They're looking to ship these out to China and Southeast Asia as well as Africa. As like a more efficiently produced vehicle alternative.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you found this article on Wired.com.
I did.
And it looks like it was written by Margaret Rhodes, which is really cool. And I actually didn't say that TheVerge.com had a really good breakdown of the Mario game. That's where I found my link, which I didn't say. And that was put together by Chris Plant. Guys, we kind of took a long time here. Yeah. Let's get out of here. Let's go to break.
We had a lot of interesting stuff to talk about.
Open source. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
See you in 30 seconds. Hey everybody, how's it going? David Geisler here, host of the Technophiles podcast, and I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about our new Patreon page. We're very excited about it. Of course, it's patreon.com/technophiles. We have a lot of different options. If you just want to give us $1 a month just to be awesome, or $2 or $5, we have a lot of different opportunities for people to contribute to the show. In fact, we have some things about people suggesting topics or people actually writing into us, maybe doing some Google Hangouts. We've got a lot of cool stuff happening over there in our rewards section on our Patreon page, patreon.com/technophiles. We absolutely love our audience. It's really exciting every day to see people tuning in all over the globe to listen to the show. And if any are inclined to kind of become part of the team here and give us some support, we would be really humbled. It'd be really exciting. So I don't want to take any longer. I just wanted to tell you about it. We're very excited. And you can also find a little bit more information about it on our website, technophilespodcast.com. Thank you very much. Let's get back to the show. From TPN at technophilespodcast.com, I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast. All right, we are back from the break. We just had a mini episode inside our break about
we like
whether Krista-Lee feels it's worth
Yeah, sure.
iOS 7
Make
or
that a
iPhone
bonus
7
segment.
Make that
is
like a
working on it.
bonus for Patreon members.
Yeah.
I'll
There
throw
you
that.
go.
I'll throw that into our. Sure, I'll throw it into
Throw
our
it on the
Patreon.
Did you
Patreon
see my
account.
note before though do the talk about the Patreon?
So I was actually going to do Patreon coming back in from this break because
Hey-o.
we just had an ad about me talking to people about it. But Krista-Lee, I was
didn't
wondering
realize
if
that was playing.
Yep. Well, it was great. It was
Oh, we
like
were all
It
arguing.
was a casual little ad. Casual little promo. But Krista-Lee, why don't you tell some of our listeners, seriously, this isn't a pitch or anything, but we spent some time here coming up with some rewards that we're kind of excited about with Patreon. And do you want to talk about any that kind of stand out for you?
Oh, wow. You're just going to throw me under the bus.
We've had like 3 or 4 meetings on this. What are you talking about? Throwing you
I
under the bus?
know, but it's been, oh man, long day, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this. Yeah, so we actually do have a couple of cool things. But the problem is I don't remember what level is what. So
I'll help.
At some point, you can actually donate enough money to us, and David and another cast member will do a Google Hangout with you.
Oh yeah, that's a couple
That's
dollars a
one of our
month,
rewards.
and that'll be Google Hangouts where we'll be able to talk about ideas for future shows and stuff like that. Ideas
Yeah.
about the set here in the studio, or whatever we want to talk about. We'll do that once a month.
Right.
We got some fun, silly stuff where. People who are willing to give us a dollar or two or 3 or 4 or 5 a month will have different silly songs and
Yep.
blog posts and stuff like that. And we're kind of excited about it. Really, at the end of the day, what it is, and our final tier is actually someone being able to get actual executive producer credit on all of our episodes and stuff like that, which is very exciting. There's everything in between. But really, what it is, what we're most excited about is that a lot of these rewards that Krista-Lee and I put together, they're not just like, hey, cool. I mean, shirts and posters, those are always fun and exciting.
Yeah.
But we were trying to figure out, like, is there a way that we can thank our patrons back by having them become more involved in our process?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of our rewards go in that way.
Oh yeah, so we have like a guaranteed, if you give us this many dollars per month, we'll like read comments that you have.
We
the
have some
show.
topic, suggest a topic that we'll definitely talk about no matter what
Yep.
at a certain tier, stuff like that. And it's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can find that at patreon.com/technophiles.
If you guys pledge lots of money, David will give you a silly song.
That's one of
I
them.
miss those silly
That's
songs.
seriously one of them.
Yeah.
Five or more.
Yeah.
5 or more. Get included in a monthly silly
I'll
song.
just take
thanking
on
you.
our Patreon.
I am
page right
totally on your Patreon right now. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about becoming a patron.
now. We just got it started. It's bare bones. We still have to put our
Oh, it looks
Patreon
good, though.
video.
It looks good.
The 4 of us, once we kind of get this studio going, we're going to make the 4 of us will make a Patreon video and all of that.
It'll be sweet.
fun.
Yeah.
But right now it's out there. It's kind of bare bones, but it's out there, and take a look if you want. We would definitely appreciate it. Like I said in the ad, we have tons of people that listen, and if they're inclined to help us, support us the show either financially or by helping us with literally like suggesting topics and things like that, that's really exciting.
Mhm.
Krista-Lee.
Yeah.
Jake Gill.
That sounds better.
I looked at Krista-Lee and I
You
realized
read my
I was
notes today, right?
talking to the wrong
Yeah.
person.
Well, I did.
So, David, this
Jake,
is kind of a
I
perfect
think
transition.
Yeah, I think we've got a beefy episode here.
We do have a beefy episode, but to start, like, we're talking about open source stuff. We're talking about crowd knowledge, crowdfunding, a bunch of things.
I'll allow the transition.
And I mean, Patreon
Thanks,
is
Captain.
kind of this in a nutshell. But really, I do want to talk about open source, and I guess that we can kind of frame that a little bit.
Let me ask you this. A week or 2 or 3 ago, what got you curious about this topic tonight?
Sure. Well, sure. Okay. So 2 things. One, and I mentioned it last week, seeing that PubSpace article just of kind of NASA realizing that, like, hey, if we increase awareness of what we're working on and the things we're funding, then you never know what that might inspire. You never know what that might do for creatives out there or people that are just interested in the science. And so that kind of got me thinking about things. But honestly, I was reading this book by Carl Horner, and I think I talked about this last week as well.
You did mention it quickly.
Slow Fix. Well, so I have some kind of specific examples in here about kind of some things. And I guess what they were talking about is just like crowdsourcing and what happens what kind of endeavors come out of like people that collaborate and maybe people that don't even not necessarily know that they're collaborating, but when they started the collaboration project, they might not have known each other beforehand. And the reason that this is so accessible these days is because of the internet and the cloud and people just being a click away. You are 1 click away from an expert or an amateur.
Right.
And they're both enthusiastic about things and they're up to date on the research. And so when you get those people together, if the amateurs and the experts, the amateurs might be from some other industry, but they have an interest in this. And so they're kind of connecting dots and having pathways of success that maybe some people didn't think of, because when we have a bunch of experts in a room, we get tunnel vision about the thing that we know about. And we forget to think outside of the box.
Concur.
Yeah. You need those varied mindsets.
Two kind of very large examples of this inside of the slow fix, and then I'll move into kind of the other things that I wanted to talk about. But MATLAB. This is something that's been going on for a very long time. This is mathematical proofs where it's been proven every single year that when MATLAB and this puts out kind of something to be solved, some people take these cracks at it, or we come up with these formulas, and every single time when more and more people get involved, the formulas get better and smarter and faster, and just it works.
Cool.
Very well. Now, there might be a few people that are carrying the brunt of the work, but even after that, like, they pick it up and then someone will go, oh yeah, so I'm going to make this minor contribution. And ultimately, the formula always gets better.
Well, you could even have a case where, let's say you do have an expert who's a part of it. Somebody who's not doing this little thing might trigger something that the expert's going to put together. I mean, you play off of each other.
And that's really the whole thing.
Right.
Yep. Like that's what, you're absolutely right.
So to kind of, I'm going to quote just from the book here, but more than a decade of MATLAB contests suggest the collaborative problem solving usually follows the same path. Long periods of minor tweaking punctuated by an occasional great leap forward. And this is what happens often. And so that was kind of one of the great examples of this. The other thing that kind of really brought me into this topic of more like open source things was, this image is really tiny, so I'm going to try and blow it up a little bit. I don't want to add a comment.
I think you can.
You're all hearing me struggle with my computer.
Just pinch to zoom.
I can't pinch to zoom on here. Oh yeah, I can. Oh my gosh.
You gotta track that.
Yeah, I do.
Oh my gosh.
I do. Sorry, guys.
Look at that. That's Apple.
Why is everyone laughing at the joke? No, so there's a company out there called Innocentive, and they offer a bunch of different rewards for things, but basically, like, they're trying to tap into the crowd where companies and governments and agencies can put up requests that say, we are trying to find this thing. Can you guys help? And so these people get together and, they're looking at, like, there's $50,000 prize for developing a technique that boosts nutritional value of plant tissues. $30,000 for a saw that can cut through bone without damaging soft tissue. Like, there's these radical things where they're like, hey, here's how much money this whatever is looking to give. And if you can contribute to this, like, you get a part of that.
It's just contributing to it, not like...
I mean, if you solve it on your own, I guess you get the whole thing. But
okay.
Basically here, what the point here is this company is a kind of... They are the source with which both individuals and companies or organizations can come together and say, we have a problem. We'd like, this is what we think a solution is worth.
How does the attribution work out?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think that if you end up taking money for something, that's, the company would own the rights or whatever. But, it would depend on probably a lot of different factors. But anyways, basically, this is not really entirely what I want to talk about tonight, because we're more talking about open source, like, development and things.
Right. This is a kickoff point for you.
It was the kicker because so much of this stuff, I mean, there's so many cool things happening. And there's, like, one other example, and I couldn't find it when I was looking today, but people creating new, like, genetic permutations of things. Like, we're trying to figure out how chromosomes and things fit together for, like, I don't know, we're making new strains of something, and you give it to these people and they, like, it's been gamified.
Folded.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about.
We've spoken about that in past episodes.
Can you talk about it a little bit?
With Thomas Mallaby, I believe, in one of our live episodes.
Right. So Folded, the first thing they did is they were looking for it had to do with proteins, and I forgot now what they were actually looking for, but they were trying to figure out how these proteins would fold together in a certain way. And there was thousands of possibilities of permutations. So, it actually wound up being faster to turn it into a game. The game is called Folded. Individual players basically, through the game, were trying different permutations and having thousands of people trying it. Obviously, went through the thousands of possibilities.
Right. And it's not a trick. Solved it. These people play it knowing that they're trying to.
Yes. It's not a trick. It was all up front. It was like, the point of this game is to solve our science problem.
But the crazy thing is that it works, and they did it really quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which was cool. So just a couple other examples of, like, crowd breakthroughs, and then we can switch more into the open source stuff.
Sure.
Wikipedia is kind of this great example of, I know there's a lot of people that might tend the accounts and you have like one or two people, but like this is public source knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. That's being built.
Yeah.
Stack Overflow, which is like for developers, people go on there, and actually it's been kind of, this is, I think, a company, and they are a privately held company, but they have user-facing services. And as of just a quick stat in here, Stack Overflow has over 4 million registered users.
Oh.
More than 10 million questions have been asked, and more than 10 million questions with 10 million like other. This doesn't make sense. I'm not really sure what I wrote in here, but lots of like 10 million plus questions have been asked and people have been answering.
Yeah.
And this is all, they're doing it for upvotes and for credibility and nothing else.
Right.
So, sometimes it's quicker than calling Apple to go on a forum and find someone, you know what I mean? That had just had a similar problem and found a resolution.
Yeah.
Always, that's how I do it.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are some other crazy things that Kickstarter, Indiegogo. There's not API, it's not AI, but it's crowd collaboration that helps fund good ideas, basically.
One of the things that caught my attention in your notes, and I hope I'm not jumping to a later topic and we can come back around if we need to, but I know, like in the 80s and the 90s, we all might kind of remember that every software company and every main company was all about really, really tight. No one can get the code. No one gets the code. It was all very proprietary. That was the whole idea. And now, Jake, you have in your notes here things like, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook. Like Facebook just released their API for something so that people they opened up all their codes or something like this. What was this about?
Well, so
it was so that more people could make apps that work with Facebook. It helps Facebook in the long run, and they realized this was something I saw in your notes.
Sure. So I think before we dig into that, let's just talk about open source as far as code and development.
Great.
Because that's kind of a perfect starting point. So I think the argument and why open source and why it's happening now is it's a lot about technology. It's about the fact that we can do this now. This collaboration can happen. But it also, from a development perspective, it's the same kind of benefits that something like publishing in a peer-reviewed journal might do for scientists. It's moving things forward. And actually, I have a note here. Krista-Lee, do you kind of tend to agree with that? I mean, people are doing research and we're publishing things so that we can progress the science further, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I think also
and tenure maybe.
Well, tenure. Well, that's almost gone. Anyways, but I think the important thing is you said specifically peer review, right? Because I could write an article and just put it on my own website.
Yeah.
By the same token, what was that one you were just talking about? When people do it for reputation and upvotes.
Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow. Thank you. In my head, it became Slack, and I'm like, no, it's a different thing.
No, that's a different giant company.
Yeah. Right, but having that credibility makes a big difference. Or Wikipedia also. I mean, Wikipedia is fairly good, right? But it's still.
They found their way.
They did find their way. It's still
a great
little
starting point for a lot of things.
Exactly. But it's not. But that's a little different, right? That's not a peer-reviewed articles. You have to understand what you're getting. So when you have these things where you have a reputation, when you have the peer review, it can all be very good. Now, I will say, like right now, the process of publishing articles is coming under huge fire because there are some certain logistical issues. And I think where we're at with open source, it could people doing open source should take a look at what's going on with journal publishing right now so that they don't fall into those same pitfalls.
Okay.
Because they haven't yet, but they could.
How so?
Basically, it becomes monetary, right? So I
think it's definitely monetary.
Well, yes,
a lot of this is.
But some of this is too, right? Because I've also heard about these competitions, and it's something like, oh, we will give you $10,000 if you figure out this thing. Company turns around and they make millions off of it.
That's what I was worried about with those. Right. Like that, there's like a whole thing they can be taken advantage of.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Now, depending on what you're doing, what you're running at, sometimes this can be really good and people aren't being taken advantage of. Sometimes it is. And with in the academic publishing right now, you do have this case where there's a lot of being taken advantage of. We're already seeing it a little bit with the open source stuff. So, that's why I kind of brought up if it keeps going in that direction, it could be really bad. But if it's careful and it doesn't go in that direction, this could just blossom and be wonderful.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, and I think those are all very good points. And I don't mean to say that I'm disagreeing, but I think that, there is no question that the companies that maybe that I wanted to talk about today about some of this open source stuff or the AIs or the APIs that they're publishing. These are absolutely monetary. They want to make money. But the beautiful thing about this, and kind of to go back to what David, you were saying before, is unlike 10, 15, 20 years ago when this code was all wrapped up and very secretive.
Right.
These companies, they're making massive money, but they're also saying, hey, look, we have these user bases and we have these programs, and you can get in and develop on them or for them, or we can give you the same tools and algorithms that we're using so you can build too.
And you know what happened? It's so simple. What happened is the internet happened.
The internet
since the late 80s and early 90s to now, the internet happened. And it's changed everybody. I remember whatever it was, 5-6 years ago when or I can't remember exactly, but Tesla was open source with their stuff, and people kind of lost their minds a little bit. Like it was still was still the beginning of this kind of thing, where now it's a regular thing.
Yeah.
And Jake, I noticed with your notes, I put a little comment in there where I was like, I think that I think the internet, apps, and I'm not joking, apps, because apps require API if they're going to use other apps.
Yeah.
You can have software. You could have old ClarisWorks with some kind of spell check program that is outsourced from one other company, but it's put into that code back in the late 90s, and no one knows the difference. Mm-hmm. But if you want to use that example as an app, if you're using your Docs app, but you want to bring in a different spell check API app, this is where I'm going, is because API makes it so that the apps can connect to each other, but they don't necessarily live inside of each other.
Yeah.
Sure.
And once that started to happen, I think that really started opening everybody's metaphorical doors and windows. I really do.
Yeah.
So I have a quote in here from the Standish Group that I think summarizes this really nicely. The open source model, or collaborative development from multiple independent sources, generates an increasingly more diverse scope of design perspective than any one company is capable of developing and sustaining long term. A report by Standish Group here, they state that the adoption of open source software models has resulted in saving about $60 billion per year to consumers.
Yeah.
Things just work better, more efficiently, and some company that's really good at solving one thing can piggyback off of another company that's really good at doing something else.
And Jake, what do you think about this? In the olden days, I mean this, 8 years ago or whatever it was, I don't know. A lot of times people would be nervous about open source because they thought, if it's available for everyone, I'm serious, this is weird, we don't have to spend too much time on this, but there was always the fear of it'll fall into the wrong hands, or it'll fall into the blah, blah, blah hand. If it's open to everyone, how can we protect anything? And so far, it's working out. What do you have any thoughts on that?
So I have actually witnessed a couple iterations of websites and people that I know personally that have kind of run, they run companies, and some of their code is completely open source. They call on their users to help. And really, though, you still have someone with the keys.
Got it.
Those GitHub commits or whatever. So GitHub is a very large community for developers. And I think I actually have some stats in here somewhere for that. Let me just look here.
But let's say there's a proprietary algorithm running inside Tesla code. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's something that in the olden days a company would very much want to protect, because there's if
Tesla is very unique in that regard, though.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I'm using them as this example.
Yeah.
But what I think is interesting is that other companies are following that example, Tesla's example of it's okay to have it be available to other companies. Well, how many other Teslas? How many has Tesla stopped selling because their stuff is open source? It's
no, and I think Elon Musk would be the first to say that if he did, good. We solved the problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to jump in here to Tesla.
We spoke about this in episode 298. I just realized when we were speaking about, or episode 302, when we were talking about the standardization of electric car plugs.
Mm-hmm. So I actually saw one of those things, and they have 3 plugs, by the way. It's on a charge station, and they're they give you your choice. But it's, there's only seems like the industry is trying to decide on what that one universal plug will be. Mm-hmm. So actually, Tesla in 2014, and we're jumping around on this topic, which is perfectly fine, because I think all these companies and all these different kind of things are happening. But June 12th, first of all, great day, June 12th. awesome. It's my birthday.
I was wondering where he was going.
All our patents belong to us. This was a post on Tesla. And that's what he wrote.
That's really funny.
Very funny.
Oh my gosh, the oldest internet meme.
Right.
Tesla made it. They made available all of their kind of like supercharging and power technologies. And the website said Tesla Motors was created to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. If we clear a path for the creation of compelling electric vehicles, but then they lay intellectual property landmines behind us to inhibit others, we're acting in a manner contrary to that goal. We will not initiate patent lawsuits against anyone who, in good faith, wants to use our technology. And basically, his largest argument for that was, we're not competing against the other 1% that are in this market. We're competing against like the 98% of other manufacturers that still use gas.
Right.
Yeah.
So bring it on.
So then does this go full circle, 50 years from now, 20 years from now, where when this it's saturated over to electronic, do people start getting tight with their proprietary stuff again? I'm not sure. I hope
it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard. I don't think so, because we've been talking a lot about open source and we've been talking about APIs. And so, David, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what an API is?
Yeah, no problem.
So
the quickest way that when I have to explain API, because we use some API on our website. I mean, at this point, you can't code and not use some API of some
application programming interfaces, right?
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And when I have to kind of like break it down, if I had to explain it to my nieces, so to speak, it's kind of like you have
mad science. This man,
Explain to a 5-year-old.
The API is the cords that let you constructively and safely connect to two different experiences, two different databases. If it was like, I always say, like, if you have two different instruments and they're playing and you want one instrument makes a certain noise, but you want to use the noise of another instrument, but you're not going to just mash those two instruments together. You're not going to rip one instrument apart and mash them together. It's not going to work. But if the people who make instrument A and the people who make instrument B, if they put a couple special little valves, one that looks a little bit like a trumpet, one looks like a tuba, and it's a special little pipe that they agree on that they can connect, then the tuba can stay the tuba, the trumpet can stay the trumpet, but you can use those valves and take some of the assets of the tuba over to the trumpet and vice versa. So API is curated, safe, quote unquote, code that programmers and developers they're like jacks. They let you jack into their areas.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right.
Instead of
provides a lot of building blocks for things.
Yeah. Exactly. If I'm putting super simple, if I'm putting like a Facebook comments thing on our website, I don't need all the Facebook code. I don't want that. I just want a couple of those plugs, a little bit of those APIs. Thank you very much. Put it in our site. That's all I need. Okay. See how that works?
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is when I say opening these doors and opening these windows, it started as something simple. Oh, we want Facebook to work inside iPhoto. That was a thing that Apple got very excited about way back in the day. And they had to, it was a big to do because they had to have all these contracts with Facebook to make sure it all worked. And this was kind of pre-API being so saturated.
Yeah. It was less plug and play back then.
So now you got a thing where Facebook can say, well, guess what? Here, we have these different degrees of API, and anybody who's making an app that wants to use us in there can. We approve this.
And oftentimes they're like not necessarily separate APIs, but separate like libraries, if we want to think of code like that. So it'd be like the comments thing is like one thing that you can install, and they have instructions on how to do exactly that, right? You don't need the rest of the fluff. So it's really easy to grab whatever you want from your company
right. And they actually provide a lot of their own code for that too. But specifically, you always hear about the API key. That is the key. The API key is the key that lets you connect into something. It gives you a certain identity, and it allows the other app or the other database or the other company to say, yes, you're approved. You can come through. And it's always a series of digits. And once you have an API key, let's say we wanted to make our own Technophiles app, not just something embedded into our website or something. We want to make our own Technophiles app. We want to start using something where we want our app to know if this person's friends are also listening to one of these episodes or not. Well, now that's where we're using actual API to pull that data out of one of those libraries, Jake. We're not putting Facebook on our app, but we're using Facebook's database there.
Yep.
You see where that goes?
Yeah.
And so I think that has happened millions of times over now. And before you know it, when you have one door open and 2 doors open and 10 doors open and 20 doors open and 100 doors open, basically we get to open source.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? That's the gradient.
It is.
I've been talking a lot. I'm going to dial back here.
I mean, Skritter, so, the company that I'm working on, our entire company is like run by Google App Engine. So all of the processing, we get this insane amount of processing power and these servers and access to this stuff where when we need to crunch a lot of stuff at once, right. Google's like, we got it because we're hooked into their API.
So I scroll through your notes here. I see Amazon, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Facebook, and I can only imagine that all of these companies. They're
working on. Yeah, no, there's just insane stuff happening in open source, and the reason is that these companies work on very big things. They have these grand visions, but they also don't have. You don't have, millions upon millions of employees around the world that are trying to do specific things with them. So they come up with this idea and they say, they're like, we have the capital and we have the processing power to try and do something. Microsoft would be like Cortana and Azure, these things that they're working on, these developing, these very powerful backends, it's kind of on the server side or whatever. And these cloud services, they're working on things like computer vision, emotion API, speech recognition, linguistic analysis. And so what they give you is the tools where if you have research questions and you want to solve problems, you don't have to do this alone anymore. So if Krista-Lee is doing some research, rather than just go out and do field work on her own, she can tap into now, maybe with anthropology and stuff, like we do just need the research, but you go in and you tap into like everything that is on Microsoft's database for all of this stuff, and you get it all.
No, we actually do tap in, right? I mean, I don't sit there and write the entire history of Taiwan from scratch in order to explain what's happening today, right? I mean, for me, it was a little more old school, but I tapped in by like going to books and then getting there, right? But it is the same idea. So yes, absolutely. And of course, in this day and age, it wasn't a whole lot of library books. A whole lot of it was going to the internet and other people who had done research on Taiwan. So it's very much the same.
That's for the info. And I certainly, Jake, I don't want to steer away from your main topic here of saying that API is open source. I just felt that it was like something that really kind of accidentally led a tonal shift in the industry.
No, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think that it's just that when we look at things, I mean, I don't know, it almost does feel like everyone's talking about APIs.
Well, how about this?
And it's part of it's certainly part of the open source movement. And so I don't know. I don't want to say that they're synonymous, but yeah.
Well, how about this? So that's kind of like the basics of how some of these doors have been opening for companies and for things like that. We have to go to break, but we'll come back in 30 seconds and we'll have another 15, 20 minutes to talk about some of these
let's talk.
Really
we
impressive,
can go through
large,
some of the cool things and then we can
the super out there projects that are happening.
Sure.
Amazing. Let's do it.
Perfect.
I'll see you guys in 30 seconds.
From TPN at Technophilespodcast.com, I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast.
All right, we are back from the break. I am here with Krista-Lee Malone, Vee Laabs, and Jake Gill, and we are talking about open source, and I almost said the open source movement, but it's bigger than like some trend.
It just is. This is just
what it is.
This is how it is now.
You know what I mean? So Jake, before the break, we were kind of breaking down a little bit like some of the basics of how open source works and maybe where some of the things came from. But you have some notes here. Literally, you have something that says some of the big players and what they're working on. Would you like to talk about any of that?
Absolutely. So what I kind of did was I went and cherry picked. I mean, there's so much data out there. So I started, with Google searches like everyone else trying to figure out this topic a little bit. And I was just thinking about all the kind of companies and news items that we've been talking about over the past year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. These people have been game changers for a long time. So let's just figure out what they're working on as far as what they're making accessible. Facebook, they have so much stuff. Facebook is ridiculous. But they have native mobile tools that they have. They have big data systems, so you can start, doing algorithms to try and, do better marketing on their site or something. They have client-side web libraries, but one of the kind of the big things that they're pushing a lot right now is this Facebook Messenger bots, which is like M.
Yeah, the Messenger bots. We spoke about them for 30 seconds in a previous episode.
Yeah, they're artificial intelligence systems. They're like Siri, Cortana, whatever. Yep. They help you answer questions, help complete tasks. They kind of have this framework where developers or people can build their own kind of interfaces for people to interact with. But yeah, basically they want companies to help. They want to allow companies to access the 1 billion plus people that are using Messenger around the world.
Right. There's a shift. There's a weird shift going on with Facebook right now, where their Messenger app is more important to them than their Facebook app right now.
Yes, and I see that on the user side also, where people have stopped using like the news feed and updating their statuses and things like that, and exist solely on Messenger just to be contacted immediately.
So a couple years ago, when they made it its own app, that was the trajectory.
Yes.
That was the plan.
Absolutely.
And that I think I read an article where they were making more money off the Messenger app than actually than like people putting stuff on their walls and everything. But I digress.
No, I mean. But this is why we're talking about it, because those are the trends.
So it sounds like Facebook, that's kind of their version of a Siri or a Cortana. You're not going to be audibly talking to it, but they want it to be
they want it to be accessible. Basically, what they want is to allow businesses and commercial, to use a lot of the Messenger bot stuff, right? You're going to be paying some kind of a service fee to Facebook. They're putting all the R&D into this. But essentially what you get access to is all of the people that are on Messenger. And so that becomes like a big thing. And you get all their tech, their sweet tech. I mean, the AIs they're getting better and better and better. So just kind of we talked about GitHub a little bit before, but as far as Facebook alone, they have 90 repos comprising over 40,000 commits. And it's been forked like 15,000 times. So really large numbers. Basically what this means is lots of different people are working on contributing to Facebook's GitHub. And making development changes inside of Facebook and kind of, working on this. Whether or not it's for them particular or for Facebook is hard to say based on these kind of metrics. But
remind me what GitHub is again.
So GitHub is it's the largest kind of open source repository that exists on the internet. So it's where all the code goes. And so like when people write code, they're writing programs, they can upload it to GitHub. And what GitHub does is the reason it's useful and very
why
powerful,
would someone want to do that?
Yeah, we do this because when you make commits, then you have like a library version number and so you're always updating your dependencies. So like you have to be running this version of the code, and you can, if something doesn't work, it's very easy to go in line by line and see exactly what changed.
Yeah.
And so you can quickly revert changes, update changes. And so it's this huge thing, and you can run all of Skritter is on GitHub, and it's in 7 different libraries. So
that's fantastic.
It's a cool place. It also has these gamified elements, but a lot of open source project happen on it. It's a great.
Wow.
It houses a lot of the code of the world at this point. I think is a safe way to say.
Excellent.
Yep. Let's see here. Microsoft. I kind of mentioned them before, so we can skip that. IBM and Watson. Here, I think we've mentioned these on a lot of kind of newscasts and on our shows.
Watson's getting interesting fast.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, and right, so
Watson's changing a little bit.
Watson is changing a little bit, and they want users, researchers to tap into this AI for deep machine learning on a variety of data types. The things that they're kind of looking at here, not surprising: speech, vision, language, and data insights, like trends. And the big thing that is really, I think, interesting for non-Microsoft employees is just the fact that you have a supercomputer that you can use.
Right.
And I mean, they can crunch. Watson can do things that...
Early Watson is the famous Jeopardy winning Watson.
Yep.
Yeah.
And early Watson was super brilliant and super smart, but it was all, I'll say closed for the sake of this conversation. It was its own machine inside itself. And IBM is really figuring out some interesting ways to, frankly, open it up.
Sure. And by contributing to what Watson is doing, you're almost helping Watson grow as a
that's
AI.
The machine learning stuff.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're open source, helping our own demise.
Every time you talk to Siri, you're teaching Siri how people speak.
Yep.
And I mean, Google now.
And guys, if anyone has any opinions, thoughts, whatever, just feel free to jump in as I'm kind of knocking these out. But Google, we've talked a lot about Google.
I feel like we talk about Google once or twice a month with
Yeah.
their AI.
What don't
right?
they?
Yeah.
So DeepMind, now it's kind of like TensorFlow as well, which is
what is
their
TensorFlow?
open.
That
It's
sounds
basically
familiar.
their open source. I can open their website, but they're .org. It's an open source software library for machine intelligence.
Okay.
And so basically what they do is they're Google Machine Intelligence Research Organization. They help facilitate research in machine learning. And they're trying to make it quick, easy, and accessible for people that don't have a supercomputer lying around. So they're like, we've built DeepMind, and it's the Google Brain team, and they would basically like to do some altruistic work on machine learning.
Wow.
Amazon. So Amazon's a little interesting. They have one of the big things they have is like this dash replacement service, which is an API. They help developer tools that you can identify when like stock and supplies are running low inside of your company, so you can reorder them and restock. So they like help integrate the system into your company. This is something they worked a lot on.
So instead of you walking through your warehouse and going and then pressing the button,
or having like an employee
warehouse
that has to do this if you're a small business, you know what I mean? Like
you let the quote unquote API wires do it for you.
Figure
like,
out
hey, this is low. You should probably order it in a week or whatever, or just
or doing it by itself.
Which is slick. They also have these things, the Alexa Fund. So they have $100 million in venture capital funding that fuels voice recognition innovation. So really, this is another one of those things where, you know, back to this, like, I don't know if it's abusive or not, but they're basically saying, look, we have a lot of money if you can help us make this better. If we can make Alexa and our things better, like we have money for you so you can kind of, you don't have to work for Amazon, but if you're into voice recognition and this is like your jam, then you can contribute. And I mean, you'll be on there, you know, you'll get credit.
And I would suspect that Amazon has decided that $100 million is
very much worth it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Perhaps even cheaper than if they, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and Amazon is Amazon, I feel like we could do an entire episode on just that company and they are.
It's so crazy. The story of Amazon is crazy.
They're
so
insane,
bonkers.
But they're also like, I don't even want to say insane. They might be brilliant, and a lot of people don't realize it because like they're often 5 to 10 years ahead of whatever the heck is going on.
Yeah.
And like, right. Yeah. Sick stuff. OpenAI.
They play the long con.
They do play the long con, and they're just like, you know what? We're just gonna like take over the world and then reopen bookshops just to troll.
Well, their whole pitch in the beginning, even when it was only books, was we're going to lose money for the first decade. We are going to practically go out of business for the first decade. But what we're going to be gaining is user acquisition and accounts, and then that's going to curve back up. They famously lost money by selling books cheaper for like a decade. But that was the plan.
I mean, look at the trend here. The companies that are most willing to help you to help you collaborate and get access to all of their stuff, they have millions upon millions upon millions to even billions of users.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where do you go to buy anything now? It's Amazon. I mean, and it's because
at least here in the US.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So Taiwan, it's Yahoo.
So here, this is not like a giant company that is necessarily in it for money, but they do have a lot of big names on it. OpenAI, so they raised $1 billion in funding from people like, I don't know if you heard this guy, Elon Musk.
Did he have like a rocket?
Peter Thiel.
Rings a bell.
Sam Altman, he's from Y Combinator. Greg Brockman from Stripe, which is a payment processing service. Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn. Jessica Livingston from Y Combinator. Other companies and collaborators. So this is an altruistic project. They're basically a nonprofit artificial intelligence research company. So again, back to this, it's almost like open source and APIs and stuff. Like at this point, they're almost all with AIs or something. Like everyone wants to go into the machine learning. They want to have these computers that are just doing things faster than humans can. But their goal is to advance digital intelligence in a way that's going to benefit humanity. So they have these things like OpenAI Gym, where essentially like you can help the machines play games and learn better. So there's like Pong and so basically it's a toolkit for developing and comparing reinforcement learning algorithms. I don't know if we should be teaching machines this. No, I'm just kidding. But like they're doing things like these like walking apps or Pong or Go or other things like that. And basically they're just providing the platform. They say we have the servers, we can crunch the data for you. Come into our space and work with us, which is very cool. Tesla, I already mentioned.
Sure.
So I guess to wrap up what I had brought to this discussion, what I really want to get into is like, why now? A lot of people kind of think we were saying cloud storage. This is a huge thing now. We don't have to be tied to one machine. Anything we're working on can go other places. We have 24/7 wireless access to everything.
I mean, I think in the history books, so to speak, when the chapter happens about the internet, I think it's going to go straight to, these last 15 years that we've experienced, these last 10 years we've experienced, I don't even think that's necessarily going into history books. I think it's going straight to cloud, straight to, I think this is the beginning of the internet, in my opinion.
Stuff.
Do you know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I mean, you think about like disruption, like Twitter, Spotify, Netflix, all these things. they're all accessing cloud storage.
Right.
This is how they do it now. So that's a big contributing factor, is just that we have so much more access to data storage, which is really relevant when you have lots of
I'm trying
data.
to say, I don't think cloud is a new thing. I think the internet is finally reaching its potential. I shouldn't say even finally, but I think it's happening so quickly that...
Right. I mean, what is a user...
That pre-cloud isn't even going to be remembered very much in the future.
Like, how much cloud space do you guys have? Just for if you need to...
Depends on which accounts I have.
So you have a lot then.
A couple hundred gigs right now. Yeah.
I don't even know.
I don't even know.
Well,
I mean, I think you start with like
enough.
15 gig from Google just for signing up on an account.
Right, that's just it. Like,
Technophiles alone has like 200 gigs from all the different...
I know I'm never going to reach that number, so it wasn't worth remembering.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I just know
so
I
you
just
have
throw
more than you know what to
everything
do
up
with
there.
right
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so, and I think the other thing, well, and Krista-Lee, I think you kind of have a thought on maybe what David was saying too about what we might remember about this kind of movement, or...
Well, maybe. I mean, actually, I think it'll be sad if what happens is we don't remember the 10, 15 years before this, because a lot of this was made possible by the open source movement, which was a social movement before we had these technological advances of people saying information wants to be free, right? We've all heard of that. Yeah. This goes back into the 80s and even to the very beginning of the internet, where you had these groups of people who were saying, no, you shouldn't have to pay for the access. You should be able to have this, that basically saying what we have now is what it always should have been, that it shouldn't have been in the hands of the corporations. A lot of this came out of the hacker movement also. Now, obviously, this isn't like a blanket statement. Different people who hacked did different things, but some of them were hacks of just, I'm hacking into this thing, I'm jailbreaking this thing to make the API open, to open source it. And, you know, in that situation, they were doing it illegally. And basically what's happened is you had a bunch of people who are kind of at the bottom saying, look, this is the way to the future. 15 years later, all of the big guys, Amazon and whatnot, were all of a sudden saying, oh yeah, you're right. Although maybe it's because they were the kids back in the day.
They were.
Yeah.
And now that the kids have grown up,
they got hired.
Before, but like Linux.
Yes, that was one of the things. So yeah, Linux came out in, I think it was like 1991.
Open source operating system.
Open source operating right there. Awesome. And that actually, here, let me go back to that real quick. Oh, no, wrong button.
While you're doing that too, I think that a lot of people are, you know, we kind of started this by talking about these like black boxes of software where it's just, or code or whatever, where it's all cooped up. And I think more progress is made when we don't have that black box.
Yeah.
And enough smart people in control of black boxes have decided that they're just going to take the cover off.
Right. Yeah. So just as a way to...
And still make oodles of money.
Right. Well,
because it comes back around.
Right.
By taking off the cover increases the user base, which comes back full circle.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So just to put this into like a historical perspective, the GNU project, which came before Linux actually got going, started in 1983. The idea behind this was to make a complete Unix compatible software system that was all open source and made of free software. So we're talking early 80s here. And some people were already trying to go in this way.
When do you think the people that are working on that are probably, I mean, what were your choices? You had Microsoft, which... No, a lot of people didn't like.
Right. Yeah.
And you had Apple, which was like...
Which was on a weird path.
Apple was like, oh, you like to tinker with things?
Right.
Sorry.
Stop.
80s don't.
Cut that out.
Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean 80s Apple was
modify
a weird beast.
And build apples, right? You kind of, you just bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a personal computer, and it wasn't that personalized.
Which was odd, because what we did here, and this, you saying tinkering kind of triggered the memory. But after World War II, you had this thrust of people coming back and getting into tinkering with cars and whatnot. Apple doing what they did in the early 80s, they really closed that down. But it's through tinkering that you make huge technological advances.
Yes.
So opening it up like this, allowing for the tinkerer to work without being illegal.
What happened.
And if I may, though, like the style of Apple was going after a different kind of tinker. I don't want to turn this into an Apple conversation, but maybe you couldn't physically tinker with the box.
Yeah, you could build.
But their whole idea was make the box bonkers simple so the tinkering can happen inside the box. And so if someone wants to learn code and all that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean?
They built a
they were trying to
sandbox to
introduce,
play in.
Sure. And I'm not even bashing Apple because I think one of the great things about Apple, even back then, is you didn't have to know a whole lot and you could take an Apple out of the box and you could use
it.
What
they wanted.
And that was great.
I learned my first languages on an Apple. And then I moved to an IBM and now I write other code.
Right. And that was great for what it was. But my point with the tinkering is just going this open source route, what we're talking about here, that allows for more tinkering, which will allow for greater advancement.
Sure.
Before, I shouldn't say the only, but most tinkering was done illegally by hackers, by jailbreaking their stuff, or writing code or whatever.
So what happens
and now instead of that, they give you Swift, and people have giant conferences that say, here's our code. Like, here's our language. Use it to create, which is so crazy.
I'm running the iOS 10 beta right now, and it has an entire Swift app that lets you it's called Playgrounds. You just play in it with your code and to teach you how to use that language. It's very cool.
That's awesome.
I had an idea about something else. Oh, yeah. That's what it was. I think you're right about this hackers thing, Krista-Lee, or the general idea of that is that it starts illegally, and then eventually 10 years later, companies go, okay, fine, well, you can have access to this little thing. And that's like a teeny tiny little API cord, metaphorical cord. And then you go, oh, okay, well, you can have access to these things. And the cords get bigger and there's more cords, big cords. And like I said, in the second part of the show, I think eventually there's so many cords that we get to an open source point. You know what I mean? And maybe that was the trend.
I don't think there's any going back at this point.
No.
Unless there's some radical change.
Because it's so positive.
Because it's a social shift at this point.
I was just thinking about that with Linux. It's a very kind of humanitarian idea where it's like you're advancing everybody. You're raising the water and all ships are going up. Like, for example, like Linux, for example, since it's free to operate, you can open that up to computers that you send off to third world countries that don't have access to the internet or computers or technology at all. Because it's free, it makes it more accessible and easier for them to kind of figure out what's going on with their own technology. And opening things up to open source creates that accessibility to everybody, to learn and to create and to make things better.
We all seem pretty excited about this, I have to admit. I think it's a very interesting observation. We only have a couple minutes left. Jake, do you have any closing comments on the matter? Or is there any way that this... I don't want to end on a negative note, but is there because we're all so enthusiastic, is there anything that we need to be aware of or concerned of? I don't know. And I don't even need to go there.
Well,
are there dangers?
So I don't know if it's necessarily a danger, but the red flag to me just looking at these things is that I feel like a lot of the educational infrastructure we have right now is really pointed in the wrong direction.
So it's pointed towards closed black boxes. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's kind of pointed toward just following the rules, and what we want is disruption. And we also need people that are smart enough to write code.
Someone said...
And I don't even mean smart enough, we need to... everyone should be developing at a young age, I think, because the trend here is that we spend a lot more time interacting with technology. And so I don't know, maybe the humans 500 years from now just think in code and that's how they create things, or who knows. Right. But we need to be there needs to be more technological awareness happening, I think, in educational systems.
Yeah. So just
maybe it is.
Yeah. That's just it. Okay,
we can finish with this thought.
As the educator, I just want to say, I absolutely agree with you. It is happening. Unfortunately, as with all things, we can't just say we need this and it's done. So in different schools, because you need to retrain the teachers.
Open source.
You need to. The teachers need time to learn. The politicians who really determine the.
No, but you know what? It kind of is so open source, and we have Hour of Code from Google. Yeah. There's so many movements to try and get young people developing, which is super cool.
And a lot of teachers are bringing this in. My point is, a lot of this is it is happening.
It is
not everywhere, but we also live in a country where some schools teach creationism. All right, so the whole country is not caught up.
Some people don't have internet access.
That's right. Some people don't have internet access in this country. These are
lots of people probably.
These are
So
facts.
Yeah.
I know, and I get pissed just because my internet access sucks.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily negatives to it. I think.
I wasn't searching for any. I just, we were all very excited.
Yeah, but we could try and find it. I mean,
we don't have to.
Vee did raise a good point before, and we don't really have the data to back up whether or not this is true or not. But I could see arguments for people being taken advantage of as far as like you are a huge contributor to something, even in a minute way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you make one small change and then someone else realizes like, oh my gosh, they don't this just saved us billions.
Yeah. You're speaking about this story where someone gets $10,000 but the company gets $1 million out of it.
Yeah.
Once we're going to that territory, it is getting distorted a little bit already because it's not for the spirit of the openness at that point, right?
Right. And I think you know what? And the book kind of recognized that. And so really what they found, and it's kind of funny. It's like brings us all full circle back to our book. But the conclusion in there from Carl Horner. And like, I hope he doesn't mind the paraphrasing. I was actually tweeting with him.
Can we throw a link to the book?
We absolutely can. And maybe we can let him know that we talked about his book in our episode here. But, he kind of said that the most successful projects, so there was a whole chapter on collaboration and teamwork and whatnot. And he was saying that when things got weird and when things were not as productive or successful or whatever is when these companies tried a little bit to take advantage of people by being like really tight-knit about like, we're working on this and we don't want to tell you too much. The most successful program said it was a government agency. It was much more disclosure. And they said, here's our issue. Here's all the things we know about it. How can you guys as a community help us fix this because we can't think of all the angles? Yeah. And you know what? When that happened, the success rates were significantly higher because then people could come in and they could draw a connection between, whatever point A and point B or, point A and point Z that no one else saw because that's the way their brain works or that's what their profession does. You know what I mean? And so that collaboration was really what was helping pushing things forward. And so the takeaway here is like we just need to keep pushing forward and being more open. And I think that that's the right way to go.
It's one of those things where it feels so simple that it feels like your instincts kick in of going like, oh, so lovey-dovey, so easy. But
guess
like
what? Helping others helps you.
This is one of those things where it's true.
Yeah.
Cool. We got to get out of here, guys. It's been a long episode, but this is a wonderful conversation. Very exciting. Jake, if anybody wants to tweet you or anything, stay in touch with you specifically about some of the things we've talked about tonight, they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Critical Owl. I would be happy to discuss this stuff.
Sweet. And if they use hashtag Technophiles305, that'd be even better. Because the only thing is we're not trying to like promote hashtags, but it sorts nicely in conversations. If someone contributes, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I actually do like hashtags.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
Krista-Lee might say something about an episode, and then I want to say something, and then I see a listener say something, and it starts to, you can kind of follow the conversation. That's why we do it. So you can use hashtag Technophiles.
Collaborate with us, people.
305. That's awesome. So let's see. Let's have everybody else say goodbye as well. Krista-Lee, if people want to tweet you or get in touch with you, they can do that.
At GamerAnthro.
Marvelous. And Miss Vee Laabs.
They can find me at bear_Annika.
Sweet. Wait, do you want to tease what your topic might be next week? Do you know yet?
I'll be talking a little bit more about Apple's new camera on their iPhone 7?
iPhone 7.
iPhone 7. And just kind of going into the history of mobile cameras on mobile phones.
That'll be very exciting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Fantastic. Remember, people can tweet the show at TechnophileSpod or email us at technophilespodcast@gmail.com. In our episode description right now, there are links to emails and links to websites and links to our Twitter accounts. And actually, for this episode, I'll put a link to our Patreon page as well. Go super
crowdfund.
Awesome. Go be a super awesome listener, and that would be exciting if we got to meet some of those people.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I think that's all of it. I'll see you guys next week. You can find me on Twitter. I'm David Geisler. You can find me at Raptor Paint. Have a great week, everyone.